No one on Zillow's Prime cared about the Voxery girls' screams as they cut through the night. Not anyone but a person. In a seedy bar, Michael Jones drank his whiskey and slammed the glass on the table in a dark corner. As he looked around the room, the tough ex-Marine turned mercenary's eyes moved from one alien face to the next. The air was tense, like a live wire. Someone with a hood walked up to his table and sat down across from him. "Say your name is Michael Jones, the human mercenary," the figure asked in a soft voice. Michael sat back in his chair and put his arms across his chest. "Asking who?" The person pulled back his hood, showing a Voxari with scaly green skin and big eyes. "I am Vortis, and I am a diplomat from the Voxari race." "Please assist me," Michael laughed, not good at being polite. "I do not need to be polite." Vortis leaned in close and spoke quickly. "And it's your warrior skills. One of my rival clans took my daughter Aria. In an evil ritual, they planned to kill her and give her to their gods as a sacrifice." Michael wrinkled his brow. "Which is why you came to me?" "There is no one else who can help us." People in the bar stared at Vortis as he slammed his fist on the table. His voice got quiet. "People see the Voxari as primitive and willing to fight. But you humans are known for always getting the job done, no matter what." Michael thought about it for a while. The job sounded hard, and the pay was good. But more than that, Vortis felt a duty to help that he thought he had left behind when he joined the Marines. He finally said, "I'll do it, but I want to do it my way." Vortis gave a nod, and relief filled his face. "Whatever you do, please bring my daughter back to me alive." Michael stood up, making the Voxery look small. "I will bring her back, but you better be ready with my money." "Is that a lie?" He left the threat open-ended. Vortis took a deep breath in. "I see what you mean." There was a big step outside the bar from Tasmical. Saving an alien girl from being killed would be a different job. He couldn't get rid of the thought. He wasn't doing anything like what he usually does. One thing he was good at, though, was doing the impossible, even if it meant getting covered in alien blood. The trip to Vox Prime was very long and hard. Michael and Vortis took a small spaceship that wasn't marked to avoid drawing attention to themselves. After breaking through the atmosphere, Michael saw the Voxhali homeworld for the first time. Vox Prime was a wild, untamed place with a never-ending supply of jungles and rough mountain ranges. The ship was guided by Vortis to the capital city of Vortex. Michael saw the city in the distance as they flew over the thick jungle canopy. There was a high wall around the whole thing, and inside it were both old stone temples and new metal buildings. Mike saw the looks of surprise on the Voxhali guards' faces as they landed on a platform just outside the city gates. With their hands on the plasma rifles at their hips, they looked at him with a mix of suspicion and hostility. Vortis said, "Stay close to me, and don't look at anyone else as we walk through the gates." There was no stopping Michael from laughing. "I believed I was the present danger." Vortis turned his head away. "This is not clear to you. For the Voxari, people are just wild, violent animals that can't be trusted. Some people don't trust you." Michael laughed and said, "That's quite the claim coming from a group of lizards who still sacrifice blood." The Voxhali was looking at Michael as they went through the winding streets of Vortex. He heard whispers that were not in a language he knew, but the tone was clearly understood. People here did not want him to be here. Vortis led him to a big, scary building in the middle of the city. The pyramid was made of huge stones with intricate carvings and glowing energy fields all around it. What was that? "The Grand Temple," Vortis asked in a scared voice. "They are going to hold the sacrifice here." As Michael looked at the temple, he was already making plans for how to attack it. At least 12 guards, all carrying heavy plasma weapons, were walking around the outside. He said in a low voice, "We'll have to get in through the back. As soon as we get inside, we need to move quickly. Rescue the girl right away, before they even realize what hit them." But Michael had a bad feeling in his gut as he looked at the temple again. There would be more to this than just smashing and grabbing. He was wrong about how advanced the Voxhals were. They weren't going to give up their prize without a fight. He looked over his own rocket launchers and plasma rifles. That would have to be sufficient. He had beaten odds worse than this before, but this felt different. It could have been that a good person's life was in danger, or it could have been the way Vortis looked at him with eyes that were both hopeful and tired. Whatever happened, Michael was sure he was going to have a great fight. Michael snuck through the Grand Temple's shadows. The sound of his feet on the stone floor was almost silent. Working as a Marine for years taught him how to sneak past people without being seen, and he used those skills to get past the Vauxhall guards. The temple was a maze of narrow passageways and hidden rooms, but Michael knew exactly where he was going and stayed on track. He heard voices from a nearby room as he turned a corner. In order to understand what was being said, he leaned against the wall and slowly got closer. The voices of the Vaxari priests were quiet and urgent. One of them told them that the Emperor's daughter had to die at the right time. We can't take over the Empire until then. Michael looked really surprised. Arya was more than just a random Vauxhall girl. Actually, she was the Emperor's daughter. Things were about to get a lot more important in this mission. His mind was racing as he went on. The rival clan could destroy the whole Vaxari Empire if they were able to sacrifice Arya. And if that happened, it could have effects all over the galaxy. At last he got to the room where Arya was being held. There were 2 armed guards standing watch at the door, which was heavily fortified. Michael was aware that he had one chance to do this accurately. Taking a deep breath, he jumped into action with his plasma rifle on full blast. Guardsmen were killed before they could even draw their guns. Michael opened the door with his fist and rushed into the room, ready for anything. Whatever he saw inside stopped him in his tracks. Arya was not the helpless princess he thought she would be. She was standing tall and proud, and the fierce determination in her eyes was shining. "I think it's about time you showed up," she said in a steady voice. I began to feel like I would have to save myself. When Michael put down his gun, he smiled widely. "It's impressive. There aren't many people who could stay calm like that." Arya offered a sigh. "I am not a normal Vauxhall. I let myself be captured as part of a plan to show how corrupt our government is, but I didn't think they would use the sacrifice so quickly." Michael agreed, and his mind was already working on how they could get away. "We have to leave this place quickly before they figure out what's going on." "What about fighting?" Her eyes sparkled. "Are people able to shoot straight?" Michael enjoyed himself. "No problem. Allow us to proceed." They ran out of the room together and back into the temple's winding halls. Michael could hear alarms and yells far away. It was found out that they had escaped. Still, he wasn't scared. He was confident that Arya and him would be able to handle any challenge the Vaxari presented. Even though they were running, Michael couldn't help but admire the young Vaxari warrior. Even if it meant giving up her own life, she had risked everything to try to make her society better. In the galaxy, especially among the alien races, he rarely saw people so brave and selfless. We could think about that more later, though. At this point, their only goal was to escape the temple alive. Failing would mean the end of the Vauxhall Empire, so they could not lose. Michael and Arya sped through the temple's winding halls, making noise with their feet as they walked along the stone walls. Michael's heart was racing in his chest, and adrenaline was rushing through his body. His mouth was watering just thinking about being free. They skidded to a stop as they turned the last corner, though. There was a group of Vaxari warriors in their way. In the dim light, their red armor sparkled. The guards were not like other guards. That was the Crimson Guard, the Emperor's best army. Because they were genetically modified to be stronger, faster, and more cruel, they were a tough opponent. The Crimson Guard leader stepped forward and pointed his plasma gun straight at Michael's chest. "Give up the human girl," he hissed. "Things must go as planned with the sacrifice." Michael got a tighter hold on his own gun. "No way, Scaleface." When the warriors from Vaxari charged, their plasma bolts sped through the air. Michael and Arya hid and fired back with their own weapons. The chamber burst into a chaotic battle of flying objects and flashing energy beams. With well-aimed shots, Michael killed 2 of the guards, but more kept coming. Their larger numbers and greater strength were beginning to hurt them. Michael's armor tore when a plasma bolt hit him in the shoulder. The pain went down his arm. Putting his teeth together, he kept fighting. He could barely see Arya because she was moving so quickly with her Vaxari-made blade cutting through the air. Michael had never seen someone move with such grace and accuracy. She quickly knocked out guard after guard with smooth strikes. They pushed forward inch by bloody inch as a group. The Red Guards fought so fiercely that it looked like they were going crazy. But Michael and Arya were determined and couldn't be stopped. They surely would succeed. They were assured success. Eventually, after what seemed like forever, the last guard fell. Michael and Arya stood in the middle of the bloodshed, panting and with their guns still smoking. Looking at Michael with wide eyes, Arya turned around. She told him, "I've never seen a person fight like that before. Your kind isn't what I thought it would be." Even though his shoulder hurt, Michael managed to smile. "We have lots of surprises." They ran out of the temple and into the thick jungle beyond. Sounds of people chasing them could already be heard behind them. It was crazy in Michael's mind as they ran deeper into the bushes. He wasn't ready for how advanced the Vaxari's technology was, and those warriors were no joke. He would have to step up his game if he wanted to finish this mission and keep Arya safe. For now, though, the only thing that mattered was getting as far away from the temple as possible. The jungle closed in on them. It was a living, breathing thing that was full of unknown dangers. Michael thought he could tackle the whole universe when Arya was with him. Michael and Arya felt like the jungle was closing in on them as they ran. The thick plants blocked the sun and gave everything a creepy green glow. The plasma bolt had hit Michael in the shoulder, making it hurt, but Michael ignored the pain and focused on marching forward. The way Arya moved next to him made it look like she was born to run through the jungle. Her eyes looked through the thorns, watching for any signs of danger or being chased. They finally reached a small clearing after what seemed like hours of running. Michael put out his hand to tell Arya to stop. The situation wasn't right. There was a feeling in his gut. At that moment, 12 HFY warriors jumped out of the trees and trained their weapons on Michael and Arya. Michael pulled out his gun and got ready to fight, but Arya stepped forward and put her hands up. "Do not move," she told me. "We come without fighting." A HFY warrior who was tall and had a scar across his nose stepped forward. "Do you recognize that voice, Arya?" Arya gave a nod. "This is Michael, a human who put his life at risk to keep me from being sacrificed." His eyes got narrow as he looked at Michael all the way around. "We don't see many people of your kind around here." Michael put his shoulders back. "Wherever the money takes me." Jacksaw made a noise. "Your arrival at Vox Prime couldn't have been worse. There is chaos in the government and the different clans are fighting with each other." Ariane moved forward. "Now we need your help, Jacksaw. There is no way we can fight the government by ourselves." After giving it some thought, Zaxor gave a yes. "I want you to join me. There is a lot to talk about. More into the jungle." He led them to a rebel base that was hidden in the side of a mountain. Numerous HFY warriors moved around inside, sharpening their weapons and treating wounds. Michael and Arya were led by Zaxor to a small room that was full of maps and other tactical displays. "We've been fighting for years against the government and the other clans," he said. "Of course, we're outnumbered and outgunned. Friends are important if we want to have a chance." Michael looked over the maps with a lot on his mind. Would it hurt them if we killed their leaders and made it harder for them to control the world? Zaxor said yes. "It is a good idea, but it will be hard to carry out. The stronghold of the rival clan is well protected." Ariane spoke up. "What about the strange outside force that has been helping them? We might get the edge we need if we can figure out who they are and stop them from getting weapons and tech." Michael crinkled his nose. "Outside force. What do you want to talk about?" Sided Zaxaw. "We have heard rumors for a long time. A rival clan has been getting shipments of high-tech weapons and gadgets that the Voxteri have never seen before. The people who did it are not from around here, but we don't know who they are." Michael was thinking very fast. Everything could change if there was an outside force at work. It was too late for them to wait to find out who they were and what they wanted. "Okay," he said, "I'm in. We need to kill these jerks and protect your empire." Arya made a face. "I believed you would change your mind." They huddled over the maps and discussed how to attack. Although it would be dangerous, they might have a chance if the rebels helped them and Michael was a good fighter. Michael could not get rid of the feeling that they were running out of time as they worked. They had plans for the Voxhali Empire, no matter who this mysterious puppet master was, and Michael and Arya might have to stop them right away if they don't. Michael was concentrating hard as he hunched over the holographic screen. A company called Nexus Dynamics sent weapons and technology to the Voxhali home world. Lines of data showed these shipments. Initially, he was unable to comprehend it. What is the point of a human company giving weapons to an alien race? While he was digging deeper, he noticed a pattern. He motioned for Arya to join him and said, "Look at this. Nexus has given the Voxery government advanced plasma rifles, shield generators, and even FTL drives. In return, Vox Prime's mineral deposits are only mined by Nexus." Ariana's eyes got bigger as she looked over the information. "These minerals are very important for our FTL technology. We'd have to use old hyperdrives without them." Michael felt like his stomach was going to fall apart. "See what I mean? And Nexus has been happy to help them do it. The Voxery government has been betraying your people to make money for themselves." Arya shook her head as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "It's unbelievable. My own people working with humans to take advantage of us. That which I believed I knew about the Voxari and our place in the galaxy was false." Michael put his arm around her and touched her shoulder. "I know it's a lot to handle, but this can't go on. We need to face the Emperor and ask him questions." Arya agreed with a firm nod of her head. "I see what you mean. Allow us to leave." The command center door suddenly burst open as they turned to leave. Several mercenaries with heavy weapons rushed in and pointed their guns at Michael and Arya. The lead mercenary muttered with a mean smile, "Well, well, well. It seems like we have a few troublemakers on our hands. Naxos would like to say hello." Michael extended his plasma rifle, but he knew he was outnumbered and lacked the necessary weapons. Alongside him, Arya tensed up, getting ready to fight. "I don't think we could reach an agreement." Michael waited for a moment before asking. The thief laughed. "Unfortunately not. You see, Nexus depends on this little deal with the Voxari, and we can't have two nice people like you messing it up." Michael looked at Arya, and there was a quiet understanding between the two of them. Their only option would be to fight their way out of this. It was the only way to go. In a blur, Michael dove to the side and shot the nearest mercenary with his plasma rifle. As Arya jumped forward, her blade flashed as she fought someone close up. As the two sides fought, the command center went crazy, shooting plasma bolts and sparks everywhere. Michael got hit in the shoulder, and the intense pain almost made him drop his weapon. But he gritted his teeth and kept fighting, killing mercenaries one by one with precise shots. Even though Arya was a steel tornado, she could only keep up for so long. Her blade cut through both armor and flesh. She fell to the ground when a plasma bolt hit her in the leg. Michael rushed to her aid and opened fire with all his might to scare off the assailants. I asked Arya, "Are you okay?" "What is wrong?" he asked, his voice strained with worry. Her face was pale but determined as she nodded. "Although I will live, this must now end." They put in one last push together, with Michael laying down to stop the fire and Arya charging forward with her blade flashing. The last few mercenaries were killed by their attack, leaving only the leader standing. He moved away and put up his hands to show that he gave up. "All right, you win." "Okay, I give up." Michael did not move his finger off the trigger of his gun as he kept it pointed at the spy. "Talk. Exactly what does Nexus want?" The hired killer laughed. "Seriously, you don't know, do you? Nexus is planning more than just getting minerals. With the government on their side, they'll be able to take over the Voxari Empire." Arya's eyes got really big with fear. "Nope, they are unable to. People will never be able to rule over the Voxari." The thief laughed. "You don't realize how strong greed can be. People who lead you have already given up on you. This is just a matter of time." Michael lost control of his anger. He had come here to help the Voxari and save Arya, but now he saw that he had been lied to. The bad people of Voxari were just as much to blame as the government there. His shoulders sagged in defeat as he put down his gun. "What exactly did I do?" It was a whisper. Someone put their hand on his arm. "You are not to blame, Michael. You had no way of knowing." Michael could tell she wasn't sure as she said it because her eyes showed it. Realizing that her whole life and the people she lived with were based on a lie. Their side had won the fight. But Michael felt like they had already lost the war when he saw all the dead bodies and the blood on his hands. The Voxali Empire was falling apart from the inside, and Nexus was ready to take over. He was caught in the middle of it all as a single person. In the dimly lit Nexus building, Michael and Arya were hunched over behind a stack of boxes, their hearts racing. They got past the guards on the outside and into the main complex, but they knew the real challenge was still to come. As Arya looked at the stolen schematics on her wrist computer, she whispered, "The control room should be just up ahead. We will find the proof we need there." Michael said yes and checked to see if his plasma rifle was charged. "This is what we should do." Moving quickly and quietly through the halls, they took precise shots at the occasional security drone. They could hear screams coming from a nearby chamber as they got closer to the control room. Arya's eyes got really big with fear. Exactly what was that? Michael felt like his stomach was going to fall apart. "I don't know, but we need to explore this." They slowly made their way into the room, peering through a door with a small window. They were absolutely sickened by what they saw inside. Several dozen people who were being tested by Vauxhall were strapped to operating tables and had their bodies cut open and wired with strange gadgets. As Nexus scientists in hazmat suits walked between them, they made notes and changed the machine's settings. "Jesus," Michael breathed. What did they have against them? Erica's hands were clenched into fists, and she was testing their crazy science on them. Michael started to feel very angry and disgusted. He always knew that companies like Nexus were cruel, but this was way worse than he thought it could be. Mindless beings of his own species were treated like lab rats. His voice was growling, "Stop this. What they're doing here needs to be made public." With eyes as steel, Arya nodded. "Let's get that proof and take these jerks to court." Unexpectedly, they walked into the control room and started talking. Two of them were knocked down before they could even reach for their guns when Michael fired his rifle. Arya charged forward, and as she killed the others, her blade flashed. Michael sped up to the main console and quickly tapped the keys as he looked for the information they needed. He proudly showed off a data drive and said, "I got it." There is proof that Nexus did illegal experiments and worked with the Vauxhall government. But before they could get away, alarms went off all over the building. "Intruder alert," a machine voice said. The security staff should all go to the control room. Michael and Arya both gave each other a sad look. Although they were greatly outnumbered and outgunned, they both knew they couldn't give up because the survival of an entire species depended on it. They stood on either side of the door with their weapons ready. As the first group of Nexus security guards came through, they opened fire and hit them hard, knocking them out. However, more kept coming in through the door in a never-ending stream. Arya and Michael fought with all the power they had. In the dim light, their weapons flashed. They moved at the same time, blocking each other's blind spots and killing their targets with brutal speed. Yet they couldn't last forever. Michael got hit in the shoulder by a plasma bolt, which spun him around and knocked him to the ground. Arya ran to help him and shot him with one hand while pulling him behind a console. "We can't go on like this any longer," she gasped, her face red and sweaty. Michael bit his teeth to deal with the pain and pushed himself to his feet. "We have to do it. The only ones who can stop them are us." Just as everything looked lost, there was a huge blast that shook the building. A group of highly armed Voxari rebels broke through the smoke and gave the Nexus troops a shock. For the rebels, Zaxxer yelled and fired his plasma gun into the enemy. The rebels rushed forward and fought the Nexus troops close up. Arya and Michael joined the fight and fought with their new friends. They were able to beat the Nexus troops and keep the base safe. When the smoke cleared, Michael stumbled forward while holding his hurt arm. All of a sudden, a plasma bolt shot past his ear, just missing him by a few inches. He turned around and saw a Nexus sniper setting up another shot from a nearby platform. As the sniper shot again, the plasma bolt curved toward Michael's chest, making time seem to slow down. He tried to dodge, but his hurt body moved too slowly. Shortly before the bolt was supposed to hit him, Arya jumped in front of him and grabbed it. As she fell to the ground, there was a hole in her chest that was smoking. "No," Michael screamed as he fell to his knees next to her. As he held her in his arms, he desperately tried to stop the bleeding. He saw Arya looking up at her with pained eyes. She spoke in a whisper to Michael, but her voice was hard to make out over the noise of the fight. "I want you to promise. You promised to finish what we began. Release my people." He could feel hot tears running down Michael's face. He cut himself off and said, "I promised I wouldn't let you down." Michael got very angry and determined as Arya's eyes slowly closed. He laid her body down gently and picked up his gun, his eyes bright with a new goal. It was true that he would keep his word to Arya. He would show Nexus's wrongdoings and free the Voxari from their control. He would do this for her sake and for his own goodness. Michael understood that he had found something worth fighting for as he kneeled over the body of the woman who had saved his life. He would fight for it with every breath he had. Michael held on tight to the data drive as he and Arya got on a small, unremarkable bus. To show that Nexus Dynamics was guilty of crimes against the Vauxhall people, they had to show this proof to the Galaxy Council. There was no other way for them to get justice. As they got closer to the Council's offices on the Central Space Station, Michael felt sick to his stomach. He had known all along that politics were dishonest, but he had no idea how bad it was. Arya whispered, "I don't like this," and looked around the crowded landing bay. "The noise level is too low. When did all the guards go missing?" "The airport security checkpoints." Michael gave a grim nod. "It doesn't seem right. This is a dangerous situation." They tried to blend in with the crowds of ministers and bureaucrats as they moved through the station's winding halls. They saw signs of Nexus's power everywhere they looked, though. There were sleek company logos on the walls, and executives dressed to impress whispered in dark corners. A group of armed men suddenly came out of a side tunnel and blocked their way as they got closer to the council chambers. Michael knew that they were Nexus' private security force because of the logo on their clothing. The boss asked, his hand on the bottom of his plasma pistol, "Going somewhere?" It was hard for Michael to think of a plan. Even though they were right in the middle of the council's power, they couldn't fight their way out. They also couldn't let Nexus stop them when they were so close. The way Arya's hand touched his was a silent message. Michael gave a very quiet nod. They quickly turned around and ran back the way they came, plasma bolts buzzing by their ears. They ran down the winding hallways, avoiding shocked bystanders and jumping over things in their way. There was a lot of pain in Michael's chest, and he could barely breathe. Every step, He could hear the sound of heavy boots coming up behind them. He was hit in the shoulder by a plasma bolt that spun him around and hit the wall hard. During his cries of pain, his vision became partially blurred. Arya slid to a stop next to him and fell, her eyes wide with fear. She yelled, "Michael," and pulled him back up. Our journey must continue. Despite the pain in his arm, he clenched his teeth and pushed himself off the wall. They kept running, tripping and weaving as the sounds of people following them got louder. Finally, they sped out of the station and into Babylon 5's busy neighborhood streets. People and animals from all over the world lived and worked on the station, which was a neon-lit maze of shops, bars, and shady dealings. Michael and Arya dove into the crowd, hoping to get lost in all the faces. But even here, they couldn't avoid Nexus' reach. They could see them following them around every corner and into every alley. They were always just a few steps behind. As they took a deep breath and gathered together in a dark corner, Michael's wrist computer buzzed with a new message. He made a face and tapped the screen to open it. "What does it look like?" Arya asked as she looked behind him. Michael whispered, "It's encrypted." His fingers flew over the keys quickly. "Please wait a moment." The message was decoded, and a single line of text was seen. "Meet me at the plant in Section 12 that has been left empty. I know something that can help you take down Nexus. Come by yourself." Michael and Arya looked at each other suspiciously. What other choice did they have? It might have been a trick. To get them out in the open, they needed all the help they could get because they couldn't keep running. With a nod, they walked out into the neon-lit night, fear and resolution building in their hearts. What they didn't know was that the person Michael had once trusted with his life was setting a trap for them. Michael's hair stood on end as they got closer to the empty building. Like they were being watched from behind, something about this didn't feel right. As they walked inside, the rusty metal door squeaked on its springs. It was dark and empty inside. In the vast area, the only sound was the drip of water. Arya said in a whisper, "I don't like this." She tightened her hold on her plasma gun. "There is not enough noise." Michael gave a nod and looked into the darkness. "Keep your mind sharp. They might be somewhere." Michael never thought he would hear that voice again, but all of a sudden it came from the darkness. "Hey, Michael, it's been a while." Michael stopped moving, and his blood froze in his veins. That voice was like his own name to him. He had been taught by this man, fought with him, and betrayed him. It was his old commander's voice. When the man came out of the darkness, he had a mean smile on his face. He was older than Michael thought. He had gray streaks in his hair, but his eyes were still cold and hard. Michael growled, "Commander," and his hand got tighter on his gun. "I should have known it was you." The boss laughed and put out both hands. "Michael, you've always been smart. You're too smart for your own good." Arya looked back and forth between them, her face tense and uncertain. What's going on? What person is this? Michael's jaw was locked, and he never took his eyes off of his old commander's face. "I used to trust this man with my life, but he lied to me and sold me to Nexus." The captain smiled bigger, and his teeth shone in the dim light. "Lied to you? Michael, no. I rescued you. You saw the truth about the galaxy and the power that companies like Nexus have over it. Now I'm going to give you one last chance to join us and sit down next to me." Michael raised his finger to the gun's trigger, and his heart started to beat faster. He knew this day would come when he would have to deal with his past. Now that it was here, though, he was on the fence, torn between his duty and his job. Arya put her hand on his arm and looked at his face. "Michael," she said in a soft but eager whisper, "we need to leave. To show Nexus's crimes, we need to get the proof to the people. We must not let him stop us." Michael took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. She had a point. They had already done too much and come too far to give up now. No matter what, he had to be strong to do what was right. When he opened his eyes, he looked at his old leaders. He said, "No," in a steady, calm voice. "I'm not going to join you. I will no longer be a part of Nexus's lies and dishonesty." The captain was very angry, and his hand dropped to the plasma pistol next to him. He growled, "Then you will die." His voice was cold and hard. "Both of you and your little Voxeri friend." Michael and Arya quickly hid as plasma bolts shot through the air and passed over their heads. They fired back, and the building was filled with the sound of guns firing and the shouts of the commander's men. Michael's mind was racing as he hid behind a broken piece of machinery. The one on his shoulder was screaming in pain. They weren't strong enough or smart enough, and they were stuck in a maze of metal and shadows. They had to find a way out before it was too late. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of movement. A figure running quickly through the dark with a plasma gun in its hand. When he saw the familiar green scales and sharp eyes, his heart jumped in his chest. He yelled Zaxxor and waved the leader of the Voxari rebels over. "Please help us." Zaxxor nodded, and his face looked grim and determined. He and his rebels followed Michael and Arya because he thought they might need help. As a group, they fought their way through the plant where plasma bolts flew everywhere and ozone filled the air. At the end, they came out on top, leaving the leader and his men dead at their feet. But when Michael saw all the blood and bodies, he didn't feel like he had really done anything. The battle was over, but the war was still going on. Nexus did a lot of bad things, and they would do anything to protect their own interests. Michael knew, though, that he and Arya would fight no matter what. They had each other and the proof, and that was enough to keep them going even though the chances were against them. Michael held Arya's hand as they walked out of the building and into the neon-lit night. He liked how warm and strong her fingers felt. They would finish what they began together. No matter what, they would work together to make the galaxy fair. Michael fought against the metal chains that held his arms and legs together. The chains hurt his skin. He gave the man in front of him a mean look. This was the man he had trusted with his life before. Colonel Nathaniel Blackwell smiled, and his eyes were cold and smart. "Michael, I've always known you had potential," he told her, "but I never thought you'd be so stupid as to give it all up for a bunch of scaly wild animals." Michael made a fist. "The Voxari are not wild people. People with pride and honor are fighting for their rights against people like you and Nexus." Blackwell laughed. "Free will? What do you call it?" "Michael, wake up. The galaxy is a mean and cruel place. Power is the only thing that matters, and Nexus has a lot of it." His breath was hot on Michael's face as he leaned towards her. "You still have time, though. All of your dreams will come true if you join us. Power, money, and influence. You'll be a king among people." Michael was quick on his feet. Blackwell's offer made him want to take it. The idea of never having to suffer or fight again, of having the whole galaxy at his hands, tempted him. Then he remembered Arya, Zaxxor, and all the other soldiers who had died for their cause. He thought about how Nexus's greed had trapped and harmed the Voxari. He turned his head away. "No, I'm not going to tell on my friends or my views. I'd rather be executed for betraying the country than be a Nexus slave." Blackwell's face turned red with anger. He raised his hand to hit, but the room went dark before he could. The alarms went off and the red emergency lights flashed. Arya, who was working hard at a desk in the corner, smiled happily. "I'd gotten into the security devices at the station. We need to go now." Blackwell was shocked when she threw Michael a plasma gun. The two of them fought their way out of the room. As they sped through the station's halls, they dodged plasma bolts and killed Nexus soldiers with brutal speed. Their goal was to get to the central broadcasting hub so they could show the whole world the proof of Nexus crimes. But Blackwell and his men were right behind them and were ready to stop them at any cost. When they got to the hub, they were surrounded by troops with heavy weapons. Michael and Arya hid behind a machine and fired very quickly at the people who were attacking them. "We have to let them go now." Michael was out of breath, and his gun was getting hot in his hands. Arya gave a grim nod. "The proof needs to be sent. That's the only way." They tried every trick and strategy they knew to hold off the mercenaries in one last frantic stand, but it was too late. There were too many of them, too many guns, and too little ammunition for them. Just when it looked like everything was lost, a huge Vauxhall rebel fleet with guns firing came out of hyperspace. Vortis was on top of it, and his eyes were filled with anger and purpose. Michael and Arya were able to get to the broadcasting center with the help of the rebels. They put in the data drive that had Nexus crimes proof and watched as it was sent to every part of the galaxy. Michael knew right then that they had won. The galaxy would never be the same after Nexus crimes were made public. People would cheer for him and Arya, because the Voxari would be free. The fight wasn't over yet, though. Nexus would not give up easily, and there would be many more fights. But for now, they could enjoy their victory and know that they had done something good for freedom and fairness. The proof of Nexus crimes spread like wildfire across the galaxy, making people angry and ready to resist. People were angry at the Galactic Council, which had been seen for a long time as a stronghold of safety and order. There were protests on 100 worlds, and people wanted justice and responsibility. The Council was under a lot of pressure, so they set up a special court to look into Nexus and its friends. Anyone in the galaxy could watch the events live, and billions of people did so to see the drama unfold. Many people spoke out against corruption, greed, and power abuse, painting a very bad picture. The Voxari and many other species looked up to Michael and Arya as heroes when they were caught in the middle of the storm. They were asked to talk to the court about their experiences and show how bad Nexus crimes really were. The galaxy listened in stunned silence as they talked about their scary trip. But Michael and Arya knew that their fight was far from over, even as the committee worked to find and stop the bad guys. Nexus had many branches, and there were still many agents and allies hiding in plain sight. They wouldn't stop until all of them were found out. Now that Vortis and Zaxxor were in charge of the Voxeri rebel force, they joined their cause. They started a mission together to free other species that were being ruled by corporations and break the chains of tyranny wherever they found them. People used to think of the Voxeri as weak and wild, but now they were seen as strong protectors of freedom. While this was going on, Michael and Arya went on a new quest. No matter where the remaining Nexus agents tried to hide, they would be found. In the deepest parts of the galaxy, to lawless worlds and secret camps where the worst people in society hung out, they went on their quest. They had to deal with threats and problems that were unlike anything they had ever seen or experienced, from cruel bounty hunters to genetically modified superfighters. But they kept going because they were pushed by a strong desire for justice and a strong bond that was formed in the heat of battle. The more they looked into the dark, the more they found a web of lies that went beyond even Nexus. They found a secret link between the company and the top levels of the Galactic Council. This link had been there for decades and let Nexus do business without being caught. Even though it was painful to hear the truth, Michael and Arya wouldn't give up. They began a series of risky raids and secret operations that helped them slowly put together the picture of lies and corruption. They showed the corruption in the council and the bribes and deals made behind closed doors that helped Nexus grow. But their fight cost a lot. A lot of their friends and partners died in the fight, giving their lives for the greater good. Michael had to face the monsters from his past and the guilt he felt for killing people, which he was now fighting against. After months of blood, sweat, and tears, they were able to bring down Nexus and its partners in the end. The company was broken up, its owners were arrested, and the money they stole was taken away. After being shamed and put down, the Galactic Council promised to change and get rid of the rot that had let such bad things happen. Even though Michael and Arya had won, they knew they still had work to do. It would take generations for the scars of the war to heal across the galaxy because of what they did. Even though they won the battle, the fight against greed and injustice would not end. Michael and Arya said a quiet promise as they watched the stars go by from the bridge of their ship. They would fight until the end to protect the weak and the helpless no matter what. They stood watch over the galaxy and would never give up. They were the guardians of freedom and justice. The story is now over. This story was fun to read. If you want to help us, please like it and subscribe to our channel, and I will heart every reply that says 88%. Thanks for your time.